The candles flickered across the pristine white tablecloth, casting unsteady shadows that matched my unsettled heart. Silverware gleamed under the dim lighting of Bella Rosa, the kind of upscale cafe where the menu had no prices, and the waitstaff moved like ghosts, silent, efficient, and practically invisible, just like me. I smoothed the wrinkles of my black dress, the only decent one I owned, and tried to ignore the pitying glances from the hostess, who had seated me 15 minutes ago. Table for one, 3 simple words that had felt like a confession of failure when I'd spoken them, especially on my 27th birthday. Would you care for another coffee while you wait, miss? The waiter appeared at my elbow, his voice professionally neutral, but I caught the underlying assumption. Nobody was coming. No, thank you. My voice emerged steadier than I felt. Just the check, please. This outing was a mistake, a desperate attempt to celebrate my birthday somewhere other than my cramped studio apartment with its leaky faucet and temperamental heating. The splurge had already cost me half my weekly budget, and single motherhood didn't leave room for luxuries like $7 lattes. As the waiter disappeared, I fumbled for my phone, pretending to check messages that wouldn't be there. My daughter, Lily, was with my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, tonight. At 6 years old, Lily deserved better than what I could give her. Better than hand-me-down clothes and denied requests for ballet lessons. I'd been invisible my entire life, to the foster parents who collected checks, to the teachers who never noticed my straight A's, to Lily's father who disappeared the moment I told him I was pregnant. Now, in a cafe filled with couples and business meetings, I was invisible again. That's when I felt it, a shift in the atmosphere, like the air before a storm. The cafe's ambient chatter dropped by several decibels, and through the front windows, I watched 3 black SUVs pull up to the curb, sleek and menacing. Men in dark suits emerged first, scanning the area with practiced efficiency. He stepped out like he owned not just the car or the cafe, but the very ground beneath his feet. Power emanated from him, tall and broad-shouldered in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. Dark hair styled impeccably, shadow of stubble precisely maintained along a jaw that looked carved from granite. He moved with lethal grace, like a predator who never needed to rush because nothing ever escaped him. I couldn't look away. No one could. The cafe fell almost silent as he entered, flanked by 2 men who might have been twins in their matching suits and vigilant expressions. The manager practically sprinted to greet him, bowing slightly with a deference I'd never witnessed in real life. Mr. Romano, what an honor. Your usual table is ready. The name registered faintly in my memory. Something from local news, perhaps. Some wealthy businessman or politician I couldn't quite place. I forced my attention back to my half-eaten pastry, trying to become invisible for entirely different reasons now. Men like him lived in a different universe from women like me. I didn't belong here in his orbit. Drawing attention from powerful men never ended well for women struggling to make ends meet. I reached for my purse to extract cash and flee when I felt rather than saw someone approach my table. The lady will be joining me tonight. The voice was deep, accented slightly with Italian undercurrents, and brooked absolutely no argument. I froze, my hand still in my purse, and looked up slowly. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Dark eyes the color of espresso regarded me with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. There was nothing friendly in his expression, just cool assessment and something else I couldn't name that made my heart hammer against my ribs. I'm sorry? The words came out as barely more than a whisper. The corner of his mouth lifted in something too predatory to be called a smile. I said. He lowered his voice and leaned closer, the scent of expensive cologne and something darker, dangerous, invading my senses. From this sip, you're my wife. Before I could process what was happening, he slid into the chair across from me and nodded to one of his men. Instantly, the waiter who had been ignoring me materialized at our table, looking simultaneously terrified and eager to please. Mr. Romano, we're honored. A bottle of the 1986 espresso blend, he interrupted without looking at the waiter, his eyes remaining fixed on me, dissecting, calculating, and we'll need privacy. The waiter vanished, and the cafe's other patrons seemed to deliberately avert their gazes, suddenly finding their meals fascinating. I clutched my napkin under the table, my knuckles turning white. I think there's been a mistake, I managed, my voice barely audible. I don't know you. Alessandro Romano, he said, extending a hand across the table. Though you may call me Alex. And no, Rebecca, there's no mistake. His hand remained extended between us, adorned with a single platinum ring on his right hand. The heavy signet ring bore some sort of family crest. A lion, perhaps, though I couldn't make out the details. "I should go," I whispered, glancing around desperately for an escape route, but his men had positioned themselves strategically near the exits. "Your daughter is with Mrs. Chen in apartment 4B until 9 egg." His expression never changed as he delivered this information that no stranger should know. "She's watching cartoons and eating pizza with extra cheese. No mushrooms." A chill slid down my spine. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know things, Kara." He withdrew his hand when I didn't take it, but somehow the gesture felt like he was granting me temporary reprieve rather than accepting rejection. "Your name is Rebecca Wells, 27 as of today. Single mother to Lily, age 6. You work at Riverdale Insurance during the day and waitress at the Blue Lotus 3 nights a week. Your rent is due on the 1st. You're 3 months behind on your student loans, and Lily needs dental work you can't afford." Each fact landed like a physical blow. I felt stripped bare, exposed in a way that went beyond the physical. "Are you threatening me?" For the first time, something like genuine amusement flickered in his eyes. "If I were threatening you, Tesoro, you wouldn't need to ask." The coffee arrived, presented with reverent hands by the barista. Alex never took his eyes off me as the ritual of pouring and placing commenced. When we were alone again, he lifted his cup. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice a low command. I didn't reach for my cup. "What do you want from me?" "For now, I want you to drink your coffee, enjoy your dessert, and pretend we're celebrating our anniversary." His gaze flicked briefly to the cafe entrance. "The man who just walked in, don't look, believes I'm a happily married man. It's in both our interests that he continues to believe this." Against my better judgment, curiosity sparked. "Why?" "Because Rebecca Wells," he said my name like he was tasting it. "The difference between us leaving this cafe alive or dead tonight may depend on how convincingly you can play the role of my beloved wife." The threat should have terrified me into fleeing, but something in his tone, the flat certainty devoid of drama or exaggeration, made my blood run cold in a different way. He wasn't threatening me. He was stating a fact. "I can't. You can, and you will." He reached across the table, capturing my hand in his. His skin was warm, his grip gentle but unbreakable. "Smile at me like you love me, Carissima. Our lives depend on it." Something in his eyes, a flicker of something almost like vulnerability, made me hesitate. Then his thumb stroked across my knuckles in a gesture so intimate it sent heat racing up my arm, and I found myself smiling automatically, my body responding to his touch before my mind could catch up. "There she is," he murmured, satisfaction evident in his tone. "My beautiful wife." "This is insane," I whispered through my smile, trying to keep my expression loving while panic clawed at my throat. "I don't even know your full name." "Alessandro Vittorio Romano, head of the Romano family, and for tonight, your husband of 3 years." The Romano family. Suddenly, fragments of news headlines connected in my mind. Suspected organized crime, racketeering allegations that never stuck, whispers of businesses that mysteriously changed hands after refusing protection. "You're a criminal," I breathed, the smile faltering on my lips. His grip tightened infinitesimally. "Careful, Tesoro. Some words once spoken can't be taken back." I swallowed hard. "You're a businessman," I amended, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Very good." A man approached our table then, expensively dressed but with none of Alex's refined elegance. There was something coarse about him, from his too loud laugh to his overly familiar slap on Alex's shoulder. "Romano, holding out on me, you sly dog." The man's gaze raked over me with naked appreciation that made my skin crawl. Never mentioned a wife before. Alex's expression remained pleasant, but something deadly flickered in his eyes. "Mr. Diaz, I don't recall inviting you to my table." "Come now, we're practically partners." Diaz pulled up a chair uninvited, his knee brushing mine under the table. I flinched involuntarily. "Aren't you going to introduce me to the lovely Signora?" Before I could respond, Alex's hand captured mine again, his thumb stroking possessively over the bare ring finger that suddenly felt conspicuously empty. "My wife values her privacy," Alex said smoothly. "As do I." "Can't she speak for herself?" Diaz leered at me. "What's your name, beautiful?" I felt Alex tense beside me, the predator ready to strike. In that moment, instinct took over, not self-preservation, but the strange urge to protect this dangerous man from whatever was about to happen. "Alexandra," I said, letting my voice drop into a husky register as I leaned against Alex's arm. But only my husband calls me that. Something dark and possessive flashed in Alex's eyes as he glanced down at me. His arm slid around my waist, pulling me closer until I was practically in his lap. "You see, Diaz," he said, never taking his eyes off me. "My wife is shy with strangers." "Shy?" Diaz snorted. "Women like that aren't shy." There. Alex's movement was so swift I barely registered it. One moment we were seated normally. The next, his hand was somehow on Diaz's wrist, bending it at an angle that made the other man's face drain of color. "Choose your next words with exceptional care," Alex said, his voice soft and all the more terrifying for it. "You're speaking about my wife." I should have been frightened. Instead, something molten and dangerous pooled in my stomach at the naked possession in his voice. No one had ever defended me before. No one had ever claimed me with such absolute certainty. "No offense meant," Diaz choked out, sweat beading on his forehead. "Beautiful woman. Lucky man." Alex released him with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "Indeed. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're celebrating our anniversary." Diaz retreated, nursing his wrist and his wounded pride. When he was gone, Alex's arm remained around me, his heat seeping through the thin fabric of my dress. "You did well," he murmured against my ear, his breath sending shivers down my neck. "But our evening is just beginning. I should have pulled away, should have gathered my things and run as fast and far as I could. Instead, I found myself leaning into his touch, drawn by some magnetic pull I couldn't explain. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. His eyes darkened as they met mine. "Now we make sure Diaz believes we're exactly what we appear to be, deeply, passionately in love." His finger traced my jawline with feather-like precision. "Can you do that for me, Rebecca?" The way he said my name, like a prayer and a sin wrapped into one, made it impossible to think clearly. Or perhaps, he continued, his gaze dropping to my lips, "you'd prefer I take you home to your daughter now. This isn't your world. You could walk away, return to your life, and forget tonight ever happened." It was the first real choice he'd offered me, and something told me it might be the last. I should have taken it, grabbed my purse and fled back to my safe, predictable struggle of a life, back to overdue bills and empty refrigerators and falling asleep alone every night. Instead, I heard myself say, "I can do it." Something like triumph flashed in his eyes. "One night as my wife," he said, his finger still tracing the line of my jaw. "Do exactly as I say, and tomorrow you'll find your financial situation improved." The implication was clear, and pride flared hot in my chest. "I'm not for sale." "No," he agreed, surprising me. "You're not? Consider it compensation for your acting skills." His thumb brushed my lower lip in a gesture so intimate I forgot how to breathe. "And I always pay my debts." The intensity of his gaze made me feel like prey and predator simultaneously. "Why me?" I whispered. "You could have chosen anyone." "Not anyone," he corrected. "I needed someone unexpected. Someone Diaz couldn't have investigated in advance." His eyes traveled over my face with clinical assessment that somehow still felt like a caress. Someone beautiful enough to be believable as my wife, but not connected to my world. So I was just convenient. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, perhaps, or something darker. "Let's find out how convenient this arrangement will be." He stood in one fluid motion, offering his hand. This time I took it, allowing him to pull me to my feet. The bill appeared and disappeared with a flash of platinum card. Then we were moving through the cafe, his hand possessively at the small of my back, guiding me toward the waiting SUVs outside. Reality crashed back as we reached the door. "Wait, my daughter will be picked up by my driver and brought to us if we're delayed beyond 9, he said smoothly. Mrs. Chen has already been compensated generously for extending her babysitting hours. The casual way he'd inserted himself into my life, making arrangements for my child, sent a chill through me. I can't let strangers take my daughter. He paused at the cafe entrance, turning to face me fully. "Nothing will happen to Lily," he said, his voice softer than I'd heard it yet. "I give you my word." The word of a man who's forcing me to pretend to be his wife. His smile was sharp. The word of a man who protects what's his. "And tonight, Carissima, you're mine." The night air hit my lungs like ice water, a stark contrast to the heat radiating from Alex's hand at the small of my back. His bodyguards materialized around us, creating a human barrier between us and the street. One opened the door to the middle SUV, and before I could process what was happening, Alex guided me inside with gentle pressure. The interior was all soft black leather and subtle luxury. Alex slid in beside me, his thigh pressing against mine in the spacious back seat that suddenly felt too small. The door closed with a solid thunk that sounded like finality. "Where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady as the vehicle pulled away from the curb. Alex studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the dim interior. "The Diaz situation is more complicated than anticipated. We're going to my home." "Your home? But I can't. I need to get back to Lily." As I said, arrangements have been made. His tone left no room for argument, yet something in his eyes softened as he registered my panic. "Your daughter will be brought to us if necessary, or return to your apartment if we conclude our business quickly." Our business? The phrase hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to consider. I glanced at the passing scenery, the opulence of this neighborhood so far removed from my daily reality. The moon reflected off the lake, casting silver ribbons across water that probably concealed more secrets than I could imagine. My life had changed in the span of a coffee order. A memory surfaced, my childhood self staring at mansions like these from a bus window during rare foster home field trips. I'd press my nose against the glass, imagining a life where someone wanted me enough to provide such security. Now I sat beside a dangerous stranger offering exactly that, albeit with strings attached I couldn't yet see. Alex's phone vibrated again. He checked it briefly, his expression hardening momentarily before returning to its usual controlled state. "Diaz is moving his men to various positions throughout the city. He's anticipating my reaction." His hand, still on my knee, tightened fractionally. The implication sent a shiver through me. Would he really hurt you? Because of me? Something flashed in Alex's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at my concern for his safety rather than my own. "He would try," Alex said, his voice dropping to a dangerous timbre. "Many have. None have succeeded twice. What exactly is this situation with Diaz?" I asked, desperate to understand what I'd been dragged into. Alex's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Eduardo Diaz believes he can force a partnership with my family through threats and leverage. Tonight was meant to be a negotiation." He paused, his gaze intense. "And I'm the leverage or the distraction?" His lips curved in that not-quite smile that made my stomach flip. "You're the complication he wasn't expecting. Diaz has been investigating my personal life for weeks, looking for pressure points. He believes discovering my secret wife gives him an advantage." "Does it?" I asked, suddenly aware of how little I knew about the dangerous game I was playing. Alex's hand settled on my knee, the weight of it both reassuring and terrifying. "On the contrary, Kara, you've given me the advantage." The city lights slid past the tinted windows as we drove deeper into the wealthy lakefront district I'd only seen in magazine spreads. Eventually, we turned onto a private drive flanked by tall iron gates that opened silently at our approach. The house, mansion really, appeared through the darkness. A sprawling modern structure of glass and stone perched on the lake's edge. More security personnel patrolled the grounds, barely visible in the strategic landscape lighting. "Welcome home," Alex murmured, as the SUV stopped at the front entrance. His emphasis on home sent an involuntary shiver through me. Inside, the house was a study in minimalist luxury, soaring ceilings, clean lines, and art pieces that probably cost more than everything I'd ever owned combined. A staff member appeared silently, took Alex's coat, and disappeared without a word. "Drink?" Alex moved to a bar cart that gleamed with crystal decanters. "I need to understand what's happening," I said, remaining firmly by the entryway. "What does Diaz want from you? Why did you need a fake wife tonight?" Alex poured amber liquid into 2 glasses, ignoring my refusal. "Diaz controls certain ports I require for my import business. He recently discovered one of my lieutenants was skimming profits and believes this gives him leverage to demand a full partnership. And that's bad? Because Eduardo Diaz is a rabid dog who would destroy everything my family has built over 3 generations. His voice remained calm, but something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "He deals in human trafficking, among other distasteful enterprises I don't allow in my territory." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold, despite the comfortable temperature of the room. "So you're saying you're the better criminal?" In an instant, he was before me, moving with that predatory grace that made my heart race. He lifted my chin with one finger, forcing me to meet his gaze. "I'm saying, Carissima, that there are lines even men like me don't cross." His eyes searched mine, and tonight you helped me draw one of those lines. "How?" I whispered, unable to look away from the intensity of his stare. Diaz now believes I have a wife I've kept hidden to protect. My mind flashed to the small, faded photograph in my wallet. My mother, gone since I was 4. I'd inherited her caution, her wariness of men with easy smiles and hard eyes. Yet here I stood, with a man who didn't bother to hide his dangerous nature, who wore his power like a second skin. What would happen? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. If I walked out that door right now? The question hung between us, raw and honest. Alex considered me, his expression inscrutable. You won't, he finally said, not a command but a certainty that unnerved me. The expensive watch on his wrist caught the light as he reached for his glass. 6 years ago, he said abruptly, my father died in that chair you're standing beside. I instinctively stepped away from it. Not from violence, heart attack. His last words to me were about legacy, about the future he'd envisioned for our family. A legitimate future, Alex continued, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Every generation of Romanos has moved further from the shadows of our beginnings. My grandfather ran protection rackets. My father built shipping companies. I invest in technology, real estate, clean energy. His eyes found mine. Diaz threatens that transition. He wants to drag us backward. He'll think twice before moving against me directly. His thumb traced my lower lip, sending electricity coursing through my veins. He knows the rules of our world. Families are sacred. I'm not actually your wife, I reminded him, my voice embarrassingly breathless. Something dark and possessive flickered across his features. Details, he murmured, his accent thickening. His hand slid to cup my cheek, and I found myself leaning into his touch before I could stop myself. The phone in his pocket vibrated, breaking the moment. Alex stepped back, checking the screen with a frown. Excuse me, he said, moving toward what appeared to be an office. Make yourself comfortable. This won't take long. When he disappeared, I released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of the situation. I was in a mafia boss's home, pretending to be his wife because some rival criminal thought it would give him leverage. It was insanity. I should call the police or run or both. I pulled out my phone, relieved to find I still had service. My finger hovered over the emergency call button, but something stopped me. What would I even say? Help. I'm being held captive by a devastatingly handsome crime lord who's offering to solve my financial problems if I pretend to be his wife for one night. Besides, Alex knew where Lily was, where I lived. My entire life history, apparently. Instead, I texted Mrs. Chen. How's Lily? The response came almost immediately. Sleeping like an angel. Your husband's friend dropped off her favorite teddy bear and extra money for me to watch her overnight if needed. Such a thoughtful man. Why didn't you tell me you were married? I stared at the message in disbelief. Husband? Teddy bear? I hadn't mentioned Lily's missing teddy bear to Alex. The stuffed animal had disappeared during our last move, and Lily had been heartbroken. How could he possibly know about it, much less replace it? Before I could process this, a female voice startled me. So? You're the wife? I spun around to find a stunning woman leaning against the doorframe. Tall, model-esque, with sleek black hair and eyes that matched Alex's in both color and intensity. She wore a designer dress that made my own look like a cheap rag in comparison. Relax, she said, her smile revealing perfect white teeth. I'm Gabriella, Alex's sister. She sauntered forward, assessing me with cool calculation. Though I must say, you're not what I expected when he said he'd found a wife. We're not, I stammered, unsure how much she knew. Real? Her laugh was musical, but sharp. Of course it's not. My brother doesn't do relationships. He does arrangements. She circled me slowly. The question is, what kind of arrangement do you think this is? My cheeks burned with embarrassment. It's just for tonight, to fool someone named Diaz. Gabriella stopped in front of me, her perfectly manicured finger tapping her chin. Interesting. And he brought you home. She leaned closer, her expensive perfume enveloping me. Alex never brings his women home. The grand piano in the corner of the room caught my attention. Sheet music open. A half-empty glass of water nearby. Someone had been playing recently. The domesticity of it seemed at odds with everything else about this house. This life. Do you play? I asked Alex, desperate to change the subject. Since I was 4, he replied, moving toward the instrument with fluid grace. His fingers brushed the keys without pressing them, a phantom caress. My mother insisted, said music civilizes even the most untamed hearts. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She was Russian, believed in discipline and beauty in equal measure. "I'm not his woman," I protested, though the words sounded weak even to my own ears. "No?" Her smile was knowing. "Then why are you looking at his office door like you're waiting for him to come back? Why haven't you run screaming into the night?" Because I couldn't. Because of Lily. Because despite everything, some traitorous part of me was intrigued by Alessandro Romano and the way he looked at me like I was precious and valuable instead of invisible. "Gabriella." Alex's voice cut through the room like a blade. "I don't recall inviting you here tonight." His sister straightened, unruffled by his cold tone. "I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd meet the mystery woman who has all your men whispering." She kissed his cheek, unfazed by his rigid posture. "She's pretty. Common, but pretty." I flinched at her casual cruelty. Alex's eyes narrowed fractionally. "Rebecca is my guest," he said, his voice deceptively soft. "You will show her respect." Gabriella raised an eyebrow, something unspoken passing between the siblings. "Guest? Is that what we're calling it now?" She turned to me with a predatory smile. "Enjoy your visit, Rebecca. My brother can be quite hospitable when it suits him." With that parting shot, she glided from the room, leaving behind a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "I apologize for my sister," Alex said, moving to my side. "Gabriella can be protective." She seemed more territorial than protective," I muttered before I could stop myself. To my surprise, Alex laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his severe features into something dangerously appealing. An accurate assessment. "My sister has been managing my household and social calendar since our parents died. She's unaccustomed to surprises like fake wives." His expression sobered. "Or real ones." The implication hung between us, heavy with possibility. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how close he stood, of the heat radiating from him, of how safe I felt despite every logical reason to be terrified. Thank you all for following this story. If you're enjoying it, write in the comments where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video, as your support is crucial for me to continue creating content here.